I was only there for about 3 days, and I come home and my husband said, I just need to let you know I'm setting up a heating business. I said, what do you mean? So I've given up my job. Scott wanted £1 million. That's what he wanted. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And he said, we can't do it. I said to Scott, it don't work. You know, it's great. You've created this radiator out of all these recyclable materials and everything, and it just doesn't work. He says, listen, I know what we need to do. I know what we need to do to change the business, to increase the leads and to drive the traffic. I knew that I wanted to get out of the pig pen with everybody else, with my competitors.
This is the Leeds Business Podcast, and I'm your host, Phil Fraser. This week's guest is Fiona Conor, Managing Director of Trust Electrical Heating. Fiona tells us all about her amazing and varied route to becoming a business owner, the ups and downs of registering a patent, the huge importance of brand, the need for a business coach to vomit on, and how to stop your leaky bucket and increase your lead conversion. Before we start, I have one simple request of you. Please hit the follow or subscribe button on the app that you're listening on. That's it, thank you. Okay, so let's get into what is a really interesting episode. Today's guest on the Leeds Business Podcast is Fiona Conor, MD of Trust Electrical Heating. Welcome, Fiona.
Hello, good morning to you.
Great to have you on the show. Now, you're MD of Trust Electrical. However, looking at your career, you did start in electrical. So just tell us how you got to where you got to and touch on what you did in the past.
Yeah, I'm still confused about that. Well, I wanted to be an actress, really, and I went to drama school. That was what I wanted to do. And when I left school, I had to leave school at 17. I had to drop my A-levels and everything and thought, right, okay, what can I do? So I went into sales, which obviously is an obvious career path for an actress. And I went and worked at Vodafone, selling then massive phones with big aerials on, because there was only Cellnet or Vodafone, and demonstrating them for MDs of companies. And then I moved to Yorkshire Post newspapers, where I spent 11 years of my career working in advertising. And my whole career from Yorkshire Post, leaving there, going into TV advertising, exhibitions, point of sale, has all been about marketing and digital and everything else. It's been a bit of an interesting career, really. Yes, and then do you want me to continue on this?
Yeah, well, just a point there, because my background, I started in advertising sales as well. I sold print advertising way back.
Did
Yeah,
you?
back in the day, back down in London, I worked on various magazines.
Oh, well, it was probably a really exciting time working in press then. You know, we used to go out to the pub at lunchtime, which you weren't able to do now, you know, and it was brilliant, and I learned absolutely loads. And then when I moved into TV advertising, that was brilliant because I just learned so much, and I was the national sales manager for NTL before everything went digital. And then I was made redundant and I was pregnant with my daughter. And no one's going to take a pregnant person on, obviously. And I thought, gosh, what am I going to do? And I met a guy at a networking event, and he said, why don't you just work for yourself for a year and we'll promote you? And I set up a business doing training and HR for people like Fujitsu, some smaller SMEs, and I learned absolutely loads. And from that, one of my contracts after I had my daughter, I went and worked at the contract. It was an email marketing company, and it was right across the UK. And I learned quite a lot at that company, and I stayed there for about 3.5 years. And then I got to a point where I thought, I need to be an actress. That is what I need to do. And at 38, I couldn't have another child then. And at 38, I thought, right, I'm going to go to university. And I remember applying to Leeds University onto the theatre and performance course and arriving there with a load of like 18-year-olds who'd just come out of their A-levels. I had no A-levels, just 5 GCSEs. And I went into the auditions and everything. And they said, you need to be a whirlwind. And I thought, my God, what do I need to do with a whirlwind? And everyone's running around doing all this interpretive dance. And I'm thinking, ugh. Anyway, I got in and I was delighted. And I was only there at uni for 3 months, and I was being sick all the time. And I found out I was pregnant with my son. Neo at 38. So not only was I the eldest mature student, the nearest one to me was 21, I was 38. I was pregnant with my second child. I was running around pretending to be a whirlwind all the time. And I had to set up a business at the same time to get me through uni. So I trained to be a counsellor on CBT and transactional analysis, which is really, really different in addiction. So during the day, I'm a whirlwind, and at night, I'm dealing with addiction and then feeding the baby when I got home. So I was quite busy at that particular time. And then I stayed on and I got sponsored to do my master's. So I stayed on to do my master's, did quite a lot in live art and things like that. So it was really exciting. And then I started my PhD. I was still running this business at the side, doing my PhD. I did 2 years of my PhD, went through my transfer. And my old boss, Yorkshire Post newspapers, Mike Pennington, who gave me my first ever chance. It's quite funny, really, Phil, isn't it? You always remember your first boss.
Yep.
And he rang me up, and he was working for Trinity Newspaper Group in Hull. And he said to me, I've got a real problem with my telesales team. Can you just come and help me out for 6 months? And I said to my husband, what do I do? What shall I do? And he said, oh, yeah, just go do it. So I went there, and after I was only there for about 3 days, and I come home, and my husband said, I just need to let you know I'm setting up a heating business. I said, what do you mean? He said, I've given up my job. I'm setting up a heating business. And I'm like, right. Which he worked in a heating business. He was ex-army, so he'd worked in this heating environment for a while. And I was like, oh. So he said, this is what I'm doing. I've found a reseller in Germany. I'm flying over to Germany. I'm bringing this new heater into the UK. This is what I'm going to do, etc. And I'm setting it up with a business partner around the dining table. And I just were like, crack on. So I started to work for Mike at the Hull Daily Mail and a couple of other newspapers. And then after the 6 months, I was going to leave and he's go back to do my PhD. I were on my little trajectory then. And he said, I'd like you to stay. And I said, well, there's no job. And he said, would you go into digital marketing? I said, I know nothing about digital. I only know about print, offline. I don't know anything about digital. And I worked for him for 3.5 years, and it was brilliant. I worked with Google, I worked with Facebook, I worked with all online. My job was the commercial digital manager. I had to go around training people on digital. I learned loads, and I actually think if I hadn't have done that, because I'm a massive believer that things come in your path to get you to where you need to be in the future. And if I hadn't have done that, I don't think I could have done what I've done today with this heating business if I hadn't have had that experience. And then what happened is my husband, right, it was a little bit of a pain, I have to say, really, was sat at home, and he's a real entrepreneur, but in a different way to me. He is an entrepreneur that can come up with any idea. If you sat there and said, I've got this issue, he could draw you an idea and say, this is what you need to do. He's really passionate, but he can't run a business. And, 2 years, he sat round the dining table. We'd only turned over £65,000 in 2 years, two of them. So it's a good job I was working. And he just said, we need to get an investor. And we found somebody who owns an investment company. And we went along to see them, and Scott went along to see them with his business partner, and they were really excited and everything. He says, right, we need to see some forecasting. This is what we need to see. So he came home, bearing in mind he can only draw ideas, and said, oh, I need to do all these spreadsheets. So it was at Christmas time, and I said, right, I'll do it. I'll look at your competitors. I'll research the market. I'll pull it all together, blah, 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 etc., and look at what you can do. So I pulled together like a 3-year forecast of what it could look like, how it could be shaped, how much funding we needed and everything. And Scott wanted £1 million. That's what he wanted. And I was like, oh, right, okay. So I went along with him in the January it was the October 2016. And I went along with him and we presented the business. And they said, yeah, we'll give you some money. And they gave us £250,000, and which isn't a lot of money, really. at that time. And here we are. That's where we started in 2017.
Wow, I think that's the longest answer to just tell me a little bit about your background.
Sorry.
No, it's
Sorry.
absolutely fascinating.
You did warn
It's
me.
absolutely fascinating. I'm gonna reel back a little bit. You talked at a number of points where you learnt a lot of stuff. So, what do you think before if we take presenting the business plan to the investor as the start point, what do you think were the key learnings you took from all of those different roles to get you to that start point?
I think it's really interesting that if you're doing a job and you're employed, you're just doing a particular job. I was very, very lucky that I had real insight into budgeting, forecasting, how to grow new markets. Like I worked on a magazine that was failing, that the Yorkshire Post bought, and learned how to turn that around. So all those kind of skills that you pick up during your career, you can sort of like put that on top of. I could put that on top of the forecast and really shape something that would look quite healthy for the investors, really.
Right. Okay. And it's something I had a career path that went in lots of places, and I now talk to sixth formers about careers and say, you've got to pick something up from each different place, whether you enjoy the job or not.
Yes.
And I think you've obviously done that.
Yeah.
So you've gone in front of this investor. I assume this is Steve that you were talking about, or was that after?
Yeah. Well. It was the chief financial officer,
Right. Okay.
for Clipper at the time, who runs the investment,
Right.
and he is an amazing guy, absolutely amazing at business. Yeah, I felt quite lucky actually.
So you've taken this business plan and these projections, and you've got 250 grand investment. How did that feel?
I felt really excited because I wasn't really part of the thing then. I was still working at Trinity Mirror, so and I remember getting out of there, and Scott was a little bit disappointed because he wanted like £1 million. And he had an idea, you see. What he wanted to do is he wanted to make his own radiator, a UK built radiator. We used to get things coming in from China, we stuck on walls and everything else. And it felt great for me. And first of all, luckily to get an audience with somebody at that caliber. And then secondly, to get them believing that they can, that they can help us grow. But Scott was a little bit disappointed, and he was right, really, because £250,000 doesn't go far. Doesn't go far at all. You think, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You watch Dragon's Den and they're getting like £50,000 for like 15% of the business, and people love it when they're watching it. I think, well, that's nothing.
Yeah, you're right.
That won't get you anything, really.
So what did you do? What did you do with what was stage one of this? Because obviously there's people who are listening who've not done angel investment pitches and stuff like that. And in fact, last week's episode with the guys from Tread, they talked about they got their investment and like within sort of 30 seconds was like, oh shit, we've now got to start delivering. Was that the same feeling? And then what did you do with that 250?
There's different kinds of investors, isn't there? So, I mean, I've been on an investment cycle recently, and there's different kind of investors, and we were very, very lucky to get in bed with the investor that we're in with. Really, really lucky. The first thing was to secure a unit. We couldn't continue around the dining table, So we secured 2,400 square feet unit in Garforth. And I remember buying a bin, some cups and some coffee, and really being excited, and just sat there with 3 desks surrounded by this huge warehouse thinking, oh God, this is it now. And the first thing was to change the brand, because we were called Northern Heating, and we had Northern Heating and the Conservatory Heating Company. So the first thing was, we need a new name. We've got to go across the UK. What can we call ourselves? And Scott came up with the name Trust. And he said, it's Trust Electric Heating. But what I want to do eventually is people to drop the electric heating and for us to call Trust. Let's ring Trust up. Let's ring Trust up.
Yeah.
Which is what's happening now, which is fantastic, really, for the brand. And then the investors wanted us to go to their agency, which was an agency in Leeds that's quite expensive, but they're brilliant on brand. And you've got to get your brand right, because if you don't get your logo right or that kind of like brand identity early on, you can grow and it won't grow with you. And a lot of people don't understand that. And they change the logos all the time, they change the names. And we thought, right, we need this right to grow. And they gave us 4 different pitches. And as soon as we saw the red letters trust, and it's got 2 dots at the top, which are people, and it's heating for humans. And we just loved it. We just fell in love with it. And it served us well, because the heating industry is a little bit like, and I hate to say it, but like the double glazing industry, where it used to get where people wouldn't leave your house. It did get like that. And it is like that with some people who are out there selling, where we wanted to be trust. So it worked with us, Trust Electric and Trust Us. So it was a really, great brand. So that's the first thing. And that took a lot of money. The second thing was getting Scott's idea. And he had this idea that he drew on a piece of paper, and then we had to pattern it. So, and that's when the problems really started.
Okay. Before you go into the problems, because we want to dig into that, because people love problems. Just give us a shout out to the team who did your branding.
Propaganda in Leeds.
There you go. Propaganda. We'll put your details in the show notes. So, go on. Talk us through the nightmare that is patenting.
So, bearing in mind, we got £250,000 to patent the radiator, to build our own, because they didn't want us reselling anybody else's brand. And Scott had done his drawing. He went off to the patent office, and we were really excited. Me and the business partner sat here waiting. And then he rang up and he said, "We can't do it." I says, "What do you mean? I've given up my job, everything." And he said, we can't do it. I says, "Well, why not?" He says, "It's not unique enough to patent it." I says, "What are we going to do?" Anyway, so I'm on my way back. I'll be about 40 minutes. And I sat there and I looked round this 2,400 square feet. I thought, well, I can take the kettle and the cups back, but I've no chance of getting out with a 3-year lease. What am I going to do? And he came back, and he got a pen, and we had a whiteboard, and he just drew an egg box, like dimples on the back, this like just like loads of dimples. And I said, what's that? He said, "I'm going to design the back wall completely differently." So I said, right. He said, "And what I'm going to do is I'm going to design it that the airflow, instead of going up and down traditionally like flutes, that the air at the back of the radiator, it has to like go in a serpentine, like a snake movement." I said, "Well, what does that do?" He said, "Well, it keeps the heat in longer, which means the heat that comes out will be hotter than it will be if it's just doing the natural convection." So I said, right, so we'll ring the patent office now and, let's get on with it. He rang the patent office and they said, yeah, that's fine. Fantastic. We'll do a search, etc., etc. How did you come up with that idea, Scott? Because that kind of work is done on huge heat exchangers. And he said, "I don't know. I just had it in my head as I was driving back, and etc., etc." So that went in to be patented and everything else. But then the problem has just continued. They just continued. It's not easy making a radiator, let me tell you. It's absolutely difficult.
Go on. What's your next problems then?
So he made the radiator. He got everything ready, and we had some prototypes done. And we had to have the prototypes, because you've got an investor, you have to really protect their name. So we had to get it designed by Intertech, which is down in Milton Keynes. We had to pay extra money, because what people don't understand is things that are CE approved are not always CE approved by quite high bodies. So we did all that. We then started selling it. 2 came in, we looked at them, we thought these look great, everything looks fantastic. We sold it. We sold £280,000 worth of radiators before we'd even made our first one. I had £140,000 worth of deposits ready to make the radiators. We got it on the wall and we couldn't get it past 24 degrees. Kept tripping. Wouldn't just get to where it needed to be. And I said to Scott, "It don't work, it's great. You've created this radiator out of all these recyclable materials and everything, and it just doesn't work. And we've got all these deposits. People are waiting for the radiators, and what we're going to do. And he says, well, leave it to me. And I said, well, I'm at a networking event. Shall I go? Shall I go to this networking event? He went, no, just go. You're not going to be any use here. So I said, right, okay. So I went, like sobbing, thinking, oh, here we are again. And I was at this networking event, and there was a guy called Steve Page from Page Consultancy. And he was an engineer, and he worked in aluminium and titanium, and we made our rad out of aluminium. And when he finished talking, I thought, I need to go see this guy. And you know how everyone crowds around someone? I just like pushed myself in and said, right, Phil. I said, Steve, I need to speak to you. I think you need lunch with my husband. I've got this real problem and inventing this product, and I need you. What are you doing next week? And he says, right, I'll go for lunch. Went to lunch with my husband. We paid for him to work for us for a week. It was quite expensive. He came in for a week and we sorted the problem out. And what it is at the back of the radiator, because you're making something out of aluminium has to get rid of heat really, really quickly. And because he'd created all these dimples and he was keeping the heat in for so long, it was holding the heat, and it was sort of like tripping the heater. So what we did is we've still got the dimples at the back, but then as soon as the heat's building up, is we create a venter effect like a chimney, and then it came out. And wow, he didn't even know that he'd created cool wall technology that a lot of heaters lose heat into the wall, where this only loses 5% of the heat into the back wall. So if you're paying £100 for a heating bill, you're paying £40 for you to heat outside, where you're only paying £5 with ours. So it was a great journey. That was a great journey. So luckily we could install those rads.
Fantastic. Just go back a second, because you said you sold 280 grand's worth and you got 140 grand's worth of deposits.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
Well, this is really early on. One of your questions is about, when you pick things up. If I hadn't have worked in digital media, I don't think I could have done it. So the first thing I did was set up a Google campaign.
Yeah.
And I know that when people are looking at Google, it's like the old yellow pages, isn't it? In our day, that you only go there if you want a plumber or if you want a window cleaner. Where I knew if people were going on Google, they wanted electric heating and they were ready to buy now. So they were fast payers. They wanted a choice there and then.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of Google campaigns. We were getting leads in. Scott was going out, seeing the inquiries, selling them, taking the deposit. Then he was coming back and he was installing it, so we were quite small, really, and we were trying to do everything. It was quite funny, really, because he used to grow a beard when he was installing and shave himself when he was selling, so people used to not know it was the same person.
I love that.
So, yeah, so that's how we really got the inquiries, mainly just through Google to begin with, in pay-per-click.
And then obviously once you've cracked the patent and you can start selling properly, how did you sort of step things up?
Well, it was we used to get just a couple of leads a day, inquiries a day, and some of them would be, and I used to get really excited when the phone rang because I was dealing with those inquiries to begin with, and now we've got a team dealing with them. And some of them were just looking at us, or some wanted us, and we just upped the money. And we upped the money on pay-per-click. But then I decided I need to change the way I was doing everything. And we started to doing social media. We then started to doing postcards. We used to be sit here on a night like a production line. We had all these postcards and we're putting them in envelopes and sticking stamps on them. I remember once we'd finished them all and we'd done 250 and we'd done the 250 exactly the same. We were that tired. It was like 8:00 at night and we were sticking stamps on them. We went, we've duplicated the list, So it was hard going, and it was hard getting from 3 leads a day to where we are now. I was getting about 60 leads a month. And out of those leads, we'd probably sit on about 60% of them into appointments.
Yeah.
And we'd sell like a 1 in 3.
Yeah.
But I knew I needed to put more in at the top. And how was I going to do that? How was I sort of like going to get a real strong brand? And I had a real problem with my website as well. My website just didn't give us the exposure that we needed at that particular time. But it was just trying to juggle everything, really, Phil.
Right. Okay. So we've got to the point where you need to put more stuff at the top of the sales
Mm.
funnel to get more out of the bottom.
Yeah.
Now, before we get onto that, because I suspect I know what some of the answers to my next question are going to be, but we'll come on to that in a second. Before I do that, I'm going to talk to our listeners and viewers about the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. The Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal has two sides to it. Side number one is my side of it, and I bring you every week inspirational, that's the same word, inspiring, motivational, and interesting business owners like Fiona, totally for free. Your side of the deal, listener and viewer, has two parts to it. Part number one, recommend this podcast to one other person you feel will get a benefit from it. And part number two, give us a review on whichever app you're watching this or listening to this on. That's the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. Does that sound like a fair deal, Fiona?
It sounds like a very good deal. I'm just writing down review because I love
Right,
reviews.
okay. So Fiona's going to write a review of herself
I
and give
am.
herself 5 stars.
No, I'm going to write for you. I'm going to
Oh,
write for you.
are you
I'm
going to
gonna
write for me? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's very kind of you. So we've got this funnel that's generating a few leads, but it's not converting enough. How do you increase what's going in the top of the funnel?
I think if we'd have continued, because we launched, obviously, we launched the radiator in 2018. And then we hit COVID, so we were doing okay. I think COVID gave me space. You know, like some people, it destroys the businesses or whatever. For me, it actually was the start of trust.
Yeah.
I remember sitting at home and watching, which we spoke about earlier, Operation Protect, and Scott was asleep upstairs. I mean, he just can sleep through any disaster. And that's the army for you. And I went upstairs and woke him up and says, listen, I know what we need to do. I know what we need to do to change the business, to increase the leads and to drive the traffic. And we changed the whole of the website because I think a lot of people with websites and from a marketing background is it gives you, a lot of people build websites with themselves in mind, not the customers in mind. And also, what I think a lot of people just think, I need a website, but they don't understand that that website is a 24-hour salesperson.
Yep.
That door is open 24 hours, 7 days a week, and it's doing you a job. And how can I make sure that people sit on my site more? We're having a 72% bounce rate, which means that people were coming on and going off the site all the time, which we're down to 16, 19% now, which is wonderful. And the first thing that I noticed was that the heading that we had on the site, that we just had radiators all over. And if I took my competitor's name and put it on the top of my site, I didn't look any different. I could have been any of my competitors. There was nothing different about me. There was nothing that made me stand out from the crowd, and nothing that actually says trust us. It was just copy of somebody else's website. So we redid the whole website. And what we wanted to do is give it a real personality. We wanted to make it about people. People engage with us. They wanted to watch videos. They wanted to read good content. And I wanted to become an educator in my field. That was an important thing. So the website, we rechanged it all. We put a knowledge centre on. We looked at what common questions are being asked on Google all the time, not what I wanted to write about, like what is the best electric radiator? How can I save money having electric? And we wrote about that and we did videos and started really getting our organic, our organic leads up. But most importantly is how do we get people to go into our website and stay on and get engrossed, because I start following them then. And I put a really strong CRM system in that I started following everyone, and it showed me what they were doing and where they were going off. And then I could start dealing with that. And so that was the start of really, building up my inquiries really.
There's some great points in there that I think everybody should take notice of is firstly, what do you want somebody to do when they get to your website?
Yeah.
And then basically funneling them to that point. Do you want to go to the FAQs? Do you want them to order something? And too many people have a website which is just like a brochure. Here's some nice pictures of product.
You're completely right. Completely right. And you don't know what they're doing. We spend so much time looking at other people's websites and copying them instead of standing out from the crowd. And I knew that I wanted to get out of the pig pen with everybody else, with my competitors. And we put Hotjar on. And it's quite funny what you've said about where you want them to go. So we wanted either a quick quote, ring for a consultation, or we wanted to download a lead magnet where we could follow them with that lead magnet. And that was like a download a guide. So we had them in the guide and then we could watch what they did. And we put Hotjar on a night, which is a free tool.
Yep, I've used it. It's brilliant.
Oh, it was unbelievable. And we put it on and we used to watch it in the morning and watch people just drop off at certain places because they couldn't see things or find it. And we watched them squiggling around and then we started changing things. And then we started doing 2 different landing pages and we had like an A test and a B test and which one works the best and what drove the most traffic. And everything for me now is about analytics. So when marketing says to me, we need to change this, I'll say, what do the analytics say? Not what I say, or not what you say. What is the whole audience that are sat on my site telling me? And that was really, really important to me. And we watched the bounce rate. Obviously, we were driving. People were paying per click, and every lead for me when it comes into the business might cost me £50 by the time it gets ready for an appointment. They're really expensive. And we were just losing 70% of everyone who walked into our shop, our online shop kind of thing. So that was where I started from, really. And like you said, giving them lead magnets and drawing them to certain places.
And there will be, I've used Hotjar and it's brilliant. And just for anybody who hasn't used it, it's basically a tool. You can see where, in effect, you're watching what people are doing on your website after they've done it. So you can see where they drop off, you can see where they click, you see where they disappear, all that. So it's a fantastic tool. There will be a link in the show notes to Hotjar. And I think this actually leads us into a great point for you to do your how-to. So
right, yes.
Fiona's going to... Fiona, tell us what your how-to is going to be and tell us how to do it.
My how-to is how to stop your leaky bucket. And what I mean by that is as our leads increased, and I mean, last month we got 1,010 leads. Bearing in mind, I were only getting 60 not long ago. And out of them leads or inquiries is we only turn 25% into appointments. So I've got about 780 leads or inquiries that people don't do anything with. They forget how much they cost. So they cost me £39,000 a month. That's under £500,000 a year of, we're not dealing with them. We're only dealing with the sales because that's what we focus on as a business. Let's get the sale. So I sat there thinking, gosh, look at all these people that are not buying from us. What am I going to do? Why are they not buying? And they're through the chain. Some of them are at just an awareness stage. I might need heating eventually. Some of them might be consideration, but they're not further down the chain ready to buy. So how do I liven them up? So what we do is I'm going to go with the email one because that's probably the easiest one to describe. And we did a whole email campaign, but instead of treating everybody with the same message, which every business does, so they send the same email to the 780 people per month, we segment our audience because everyone's different and what they need is different. So I know I've got 5 different buyers and I would segment them and the email I would send to them would be very, very different. And then I would also send them really engagement emails as well. So not about, do you want to buy an electric radiator? It would be about, hi, my name's Scott. This is me and my wife, Fiona. We got married in Barbados in 2000. We've set up a business together. This is who we are. And we get people sending in their wedding photographs and all sorts. Oh, I've been married for 31 years. And we do stories and then relate them back to heating. So a little bit like, not like the podcast, but they want to see what's coming in their inbox. And then you can subtly start selling to them as you go along. So really tailored communication for them, things that will really engage them. But for me as a business owner, it's really about understanding my market, like Hotjar, but on email, understanding where they're falling off, what they're doing. So if they fall off, they're not reading my email, I send another email with 5 different subject lines and see which one they open. And then I look, and then it goes down the chain. So I've got a full automation on that as well. So I don't know if you want me to go into depth, but I won't.
I think the basis of that, I mean, obviously the start point of that is don't just ignore people who haven't bought first time.
Yeah.
And then what you're talking about is understanding where they are on that journey and then trying to re-engage and move them along. And you're right, people don't see the cost of all those dead leads.
No, you don't, do you?
And also they might not be. They might not be. It may be they are just looking for quotes at the moment. But you need to keep in touch with them and
Yeah.
I think the personal thing and the trust thing that you're talking about work together really, really well. And that's really good making the brand fit with what you're doing. The reason we're talking is you got recommended to me by Nigel Botterill, who, if you haven't listened to his episode, was 2 weeks ago. Give it a listen. There'll be a link to that in the show notes. Talk to us about how you've worked with Nigel, how he's added to the business, what the benefits are, and all that sort of stuff.
So I even though I'm from a marketing background, as we all think we know what we're doing, and Nigel obviously works at Entrepreneur Circle, which is an amazing business, and he's had his challenges as well. And I engaged with his business during COVID, which changed my business unbelievably, taking me from way under £1 million, over £1 million worth of sales from just adopting some of the things he said. And I'm one of his ambassadors for Leeds as well. I help small businesses on delivering some of his material weekly for him. And I got a business coach straight away from the EC, and then I needed more. And so I sit in Nigel's, one of his inner circles. So I go there every 6 weeks and we talk about our business. He's like a business coach. I use all the EC marketing. I'm going to an implementer soon there, where you go for 2 days and all you do is focus on, right, I need to get a better postcard or direct mail or a better website. And you sit with experts, you then sit there and you implement it, then you take it back until it's really shaped for you. And it's just a great way of moving your business and training your staff as well. So yeah, I engaged with him during COVID, and I don't think he's going to get rid of me that easy.
And we're not just plugging Nigel. What's your view of companies or company business owners who work with business coaches or those that don't?
It's really funny. As a managing director, you're very lonely at the top. And sometimes when you get to that point when things are not happening and they're challenging, you don't always have the right answers. Sometimes you go on your gut or you go with what you think you know best. And I've worked with a variety of coaches. I always have a business coach. I love learning. I still love learning. It's really important for me to read, learn, and gain best practice. And I have a coach most of the time. I don't know if I've got 9. I've got 3 coaches at the moment for different elements of my business. And sometimes I'll have the answer, but sometimes I'll just use them to vomit on, I call it, like I need to share this with you. What do you think? And they help shape my thinking. And I also think, because they're coming from a neutral place, they're not a shareholder. They've no salary, they don't need to butter you up in any way like a member of staff or anything else like that. They give you a really objective view. And also they've been around the block, and they're working with other businesses. And a business coach that works with other SME businesses, it's really powerful. It's really powerful for me, that I just think anything I go on, if I can learn one thing, that helps my business, which will help my future in the long term. So if people don't have a business coach, I would encourage them to get one, just for your own sanity, really.
There you go. I should use you as my salesperson. So if anybody needs a business coach to vomit on, I'm available. Vomiting is not obligatory. But yeah, I've been around the block. I can do all those things you've talked about. So if anybody needs that, just give me a shout. Just on that topic, I noticed you've just brought a non-exec director in.
Yes.
Why did you do that, and what are you looking for from her?
Okay, I just have to go back just slightly, but not too much, Phil.
Okay.
We know if we had to grow it organically, that we wouldn't grow fast enough because we're in a net zero market at the moment, and everything's about carbon, and we have to be the leader in that space. And I haven't got enough of the market share, so to do that, I needed more money. And I worked with a business called RTC, which is a free business for most of the businesses around the country, really. And they put me in touch with a pitch fest, which was to tell you how to do an elevator pitch and how to pitch to investors. And I went on that twice. And I got two venture capitalists come forward and wanted to pitch into the business, and Scott and I went down to the Shard, which was an interesting story, and we knew we needed more money, and in the end our current investor wanted to follow the money, and instead of taking a part of the company, they wanted to give us a shareholders loan to supercharge the business. So we've gone from 17 people last year to 36, 38 people this year. So it's a massive shift for the business. And to do that is we needed to have real strong governance on the board. So we've got our investment director, they've got Scott and myself and our finance director. And we wanted to bring a non-exec director in, and we went through that recruitment process, which is a fascinating process in itself. And who did we want? Because everyone's very skilled, and the one we've got is really knowledgeable in our area. She's brilliant in our area.
Right. Okay. Okay. So that's like the next step to being a proper grown-up business now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what we call ourselves, a grown-up. Yeah, and it is. It's really because now things have to be done a little bit differently, and the way that she shapes things, and some of like the insights that she's given us, and some of the opportunities that we've been pushed in front of, we'd have never known if we hadn't. It's like buying this expertise in, really. And but she's, I would say she's a friend of the board as well. You know, I mean, she can test you, but in another way, she's great for me. You know, to say, I've got this issue. What do we do here, etc. And I think it is the next step, definitely.
And you've just moved into new office space as well, a new warehouse again. Is that right?
Well, yes, we can't find anything around Leeds that's big enough at the moment because we're moving out of the B2. We're staying in the B2C market, we're moving heavily into the B2B market.
Okay.
And to do that, we need to have more capacity. So we've changed our old warehouse into offices, and then one came opposite, and we've taken that for our building, for our manufacturing. I don't really like separating the team because we've got an amazing culture at Trust, and everybody feels it when they come in. It's really strong, real family feel, even though we've doubled in size in the year. But yes, we have, and it's been exciting, and it's nice for the staff, you know, to come into a nice new shiny place, which is great.
So before we finish, we get all our guests to give another Leeds business a shout out. So who are you going to give a shout out to?
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to somebody that I probably see monthly, and his name's Chris Gaunt, and he runs a business called Select Uniforms. That was his dad's business that started in 1997, and he took it over in 2005, and he's more than doubled the business. He does uniforms for people like Fanels, which have got like over 700 staff. He's got massive ambition as well. He's a great guy, really positive. You know, he wants to get from 400 customers to 700 customers this year, which is, you know, basically another 25 customers a month, which is a lot. But he's really positive, and he sits in one of my network groups, and I just love it when he comes in. He's just full of energy, full of positivity, and you just want to get on the train with him. You know, he's a great guy, and he's in Rawdon in Leeds, and he's got a showroom if anybody wants to go and have a look, if you need anything printing, doing, etc.
Fantastic. I will. We'll have a link to Chris and what was it? Select Uniforms. There'll be a link to that in the show notes. Fiona, it's been really interesting because I thought we'd be talking about something really dull like radiators, and we've covered a ton of marketing stuff, which is just really brilliant. So thank you very much indeed.
Hey, radiators are very sexy, Phil. Let me let you know that. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you found it interesting, inspiring, and of use. To make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes, please subscribe to the show. Go on, do it now. Do it now before you go off and do something else. Thank you. Much appreciated. Oh, and don't forget our fair deal. See you next week.